They have software that enables geo-tracking, so where you're betting from, but also the technology has become more sophisticated.
The walls of the NBA have been rattled. What began as whispers of unusual prop bets and shady poker rings has exploded into a full-scale crisis. With coaches, players, and insiders now under federal investigation, trust in the sport is teetering. In this video, we will break down how NBA players are reacting to the scandal and what it means for the future of the league. Shockwaves through the locker room. The opening week of the season did not deliver expected highs on the hardwood. Instead, it shook the league's foundation. The arrests of a prominent guard and a head coach in a sprawling federal gambling investigation jolted the locker rooms into silence. Athletes who prepare for games now wake up to headlines instead of playbooks. Teams convened emergency meetings, not to review offensive sets, but to reinforce protocols and alert each other. The game they know is no longer isolated from outside forces. Inside those closed doors, conversations shifted radically. What once centered on rotations and shot selection now includes discussions of betting flows, app alerts, and off-season poker circuits. The protective bubble around professional basketball cracked. Personnel acknowledged that data points once considered benign, minutes played, early exits, injury leaks, now carry exposure. The message is clear and unspoken. No move is purely about competition anymore.
I believe it's the collision of money, the leagues approving it, the Supreme Court opening it up, and then just recently the NCAA giving permission for college athletes with their new NIL, name, image, and likeness money, to be able to bet on pros.
Coaches and players found themselves in unfamiliar territory. Routine actions, resting a starter, reporting a minor ailment, sitting out a game, were now scrutinized under a different lens. Where loyalty and performance used to define an athlete's world, now compliance and caution have equal weight. A missed layup, a late substitution, or a mid-game exit may reverberate beyond the scoreboard. The scale is daunting. The legal betting market has grown so rapidly that what used to be a parlay between friends has become a multi-million-dollar ecosystem. And now, several actors in the league are under investigation, implicating not just isolated individuals, but entire processes. The chilling effect is real. Players talk about being more aware of their phones than their stats. Teams treat information like treasure. Trust, once implicit, is now conditional. For the first time in a long while, players feel the game they entered with passion and ambition has become a minefield. The business, the broadcast deals, the globalization, all remain, but the landscape has changed. This is not just about winning or losing anymore. It's about being safe. It's about survival. The game may be the same on the surface, but inside the locker room, the stakes have been raised. Voices unheard. Players break the silence. In the wake of the arrests of Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups, two of the highest profile figures ensnared in the sprawling gambling and poker rigging scandal, the players of the NBA have finally begun to speak up. For years, whispers of prop betting, injury disclosures, and insider tips circulated quietly in locker rooms. Now those whispers have been forced into the open.
So there's no way we couldn't predict that this collision was coming.
For years, the issue of sports betting infiltration in the league operated in whispers. Players saw prop bet chatter. Team personnel noted odd lines, but the public face of the sport remained silent. That changed when the legal storm surrounding the arrests of key figures suddenly provided a loud backdrop for the players themselves. Rather than sidestepping the topic, athletes began acknowledging this was their floor too. The dynamic shifted from passive avoidance to vocal engagement. Veterans weighed in, players asked for more institutional support, and locker rooms opened to conversations about risk. The narrative moved from someone else's problem to "we're in this." Behind the scenes, the athletes did not simply issue platitudes, they demanded action. They questioned why so much of the betting world's expansion happened without adequate player education or protection. They pointed out a mismatch. While the league and media celebrated gambling's growth, the men on the court felt exposed to its threats. The silence broke when the union leadership pressed for clearer protocols, when rookies spoke of not understanding the real gambling ecosystem, and when established stars acknowledged that a career's value extends far beyond the stat line. The culture of turned noses and muted remarks gave way to statements of concern, urgency, and accountability. The players weren't just reacting, they were engaging. They're now part of the discussion, not just the victims of it. In doing so, they shifted the story. It is no longer just about what bettors might do, but about how the league and its athletes will respond. They have broken their silence, and the conversation just got real. All money ain't good money. Legends speak out. When the NBA gambling scandal erupted, some of its most prominent voices were those who had long embodied the league's image, and they did not hold back.
I believe that the message they're sending loud and clear is we are investigating anyone and everyone depending not on their income.
When the scandal erupted, the once silent luminaries of the league stepped into the spotlight, and they did not hold back. These are the athletes whose names defined basketball's heritage, and now they are issuing a sharp wake-up call to the current generation. Their message cuts straight to the heart of what's at stake. Vast earnings and fame do not justify undermining the very game they helped build. One former superstar publicly expressed dismay over colleagues who, despite lucrative contracts and years of hard work, risked everything for what looked like easy money. He framed the actions not as addiction, but as poor judgment, reminding the sport that shortcuts come at a steep price. Another veteran demanded accountability, emphasizing that the legacy carried by players extends beyond stats and championships. It includes integrity, reputation, and the trust of fans. The urgency in these voices arises from lived experience. They saw what can happen when one decision voids a decade of accomplishment. What was once locker room camaraderie and shared ambition now stands at risk of being replaced by suspicion and regret. For the active players hearing these critiques, the tone has shifted from cautionary to confrontational. The commentary is no longer background noise, it is a clear warning. Don't let the money blind you to the consequences. Behind the scenes, the tone among legends has been less about blame and more about preservation. They point out that the real loss isn't just the contract forfeited or the suspension served, it is the erasure of respect, the closure of doors, and the tarnishing of a sport that thrives on heroes. Their intervention matters because when the guardrails fall, they built the tracks. They saw the opportunity, and they now issue the mandate. Earning millions doesn't free you from responsibility. In this moment of reckoning, their voices carry the weight of history, and they are saying that the game's greatest asset is the integrity that players keep, not the dollars they make. Integrity at stake. The league's crisis moment. The unfolding gambling scandal has exposed a profound vulnerability at the core of the league. Whether fans can still believe that games are decided by competition, not manipulation. The public reaction began when arrests of prominent figures forced the league to openly acknowledge that the integrity of its product may be under threat. The commissioner's remarks, the rapid mobilization of investigations, and the scrutiny from Congress combined to redefine the moment as more than isolated wrongdoing. This is a systemic test.
These players make millions, particularly in the NBA, as their contracts are guaranteed. Yet, the draw of winning comes at any cost to them.
Legal sports betting has surged across the country, and the league's infrastructure of oversight, once designed for simple rules, now finds itself in a far more complex arena. Internal investigations revealed that although irregular betting patterns were detected in earlier cases, the mechanisms to act were inadequate for the sophistication of new wagering models. As a result, trust in the sport's fairness has been shaken. Sponsors, broadcasters, and fans are no longer merely keeping score of points scored or games won. They are watching the ledger of confidence, suspecting that something hidden may already be affecting what appears in full view on TV. The consequences ripple deeper than contracts or suspensions. Every franchise, every athlete, every coach now carries the weight of whether the league remains credible. The business model, championed for growth, global reach, and technological innovation, suddenly faces a reputational crack. If the spectator begins to question the legitimacy of a buzzer beater, a block, or a strategic timeout, the entire foundation is at risk. The league now stands at a reckoning. It has reaffirmed that maintaining fair competition is its highest priority, but the pathway to proving that requires evolution, transparency, and enforcement stronger than words. The moment is not defined by a single scandal. It will be defined by the response. The question now is whether the league can rebuild a firewall between growing betting interests and the sanctity of sport, or whether this will become the moment the game changed forever. Inside the player mindset, fear, pressure, and paranoia. For many athletes, the chaos erupting around the gambling scandal did more than expose wrongdoing. It forced a change in how they see the game and themselves. The guard on the bench now knows his minutes can be speculated on. The star forward now realizes that a minor injury, a rest day, or even a rotation shift isn't just a strategic decision. It might trigger wagers, data alerts, and unwanted scrutiny. What players once considered routine is now layered with unseen risk. Reports show teams are conducting extra briefings on personal data, rotation information, and sharing inside details because the channels that were once internal can now be monetized.
So to me, It's really about the addiction side and how much provided help do we give these athletes as they go through their athletic career.
The pressure stretches beyond the court. Agents, spouses, family members, and associates are told to treat team meetings, doctor visits, and text messages like they're under legal review. Emerging players speak of being coached on what to say and what not to say in public because every remark may become leverage for someone's gambling bet. Veterans mention how they wake up now, not just to their stat lines, but to betting alerts, odd line trackers, and insider tip triggers. Within the bubble of competitive sport, the threat is intangible but constant. According to league-wide reporting, a coach admitted that information once shared freely in staff rooms is now guarded like classified material. True, the athlete's identity remains performance-driven, but the field of concern has widened. Teams are investing in integrity education. Though that's welcome, the mental toll lingers. The fear isn't just getting caught, it's being exposed. The paranoia isn't only about the opponent, it's about the person reading your injury update, the bettor placing a wager, the analytics firm tracking your every move. In this environment, the locker room camaraderie feels different. Players are more cautious, private, and sometimes detached, because the cost of openness may be higher than the cost of silence. The game still demands skill, endurance, and heart, but now it also demands discretion, vigilance, and an awareness of risk. The athlete of 2025 doesn't just play basketball, he navigates a minefield. Who guards the guard? Players criticize the league. The spotlight is no longer only on individual athletes. It is now trained on the very institution that is supposed to safeguard them. Many players feel the league has progressed in promoting betting partnerships far quicker than it did in protecting its athletes from the risks those partnerships carry. A persistent grievance among athletes is that while revenue from sportsbooks and promotional deals has grown rapidly, education, clarity, and enforcement on their side lag behind. The message from the roster is clear. It isn't enough to punish after the fact when the risk environment was never adequately controlled in the first place.
Well, I mean, most of the 1980s and 90s, the racketeering laws were really there, but really get involved in the tax implications, and that's how they brought down many of the mafia.
Within union halls and player forums, voices raise urgent questions. Why were athletes expected to navigate this new gambling-infused world without robust support? Why did safeguarding protocols trail behind the business deals that monetized wagering? The criticism cuts deeper than simple oversight. It targets what players see as mismatched priorities. They argue that they shoulder the reputational fallout, career risk, and mental strain, while the league enjoys the commercial upside of a booming bet market. This tension isn't abstract. As investigations unfold, players point to how notification systems, compliance training, and internal monitoring lacked depth, while betting ads and promotional messages proliferated. Some veterans assert that by embracing betting firms publicly, the league blurred the line between sport and speculation without first ensuring the athletes playing the sport were protected. In the locker room conversations now spilling into the media, players demand transparency. Show us how protections work, how data is guarded, and how our legitimate routines cannot become illicit pipelines. The task is not simply for stronger enforcement, it is for shared responsibility. If betting is part of the ecosystem, then players say they must be part of its structure. They want clear rules, not just punishments, preventative training, not just reactive memos, meaningful collaboration, not just commercial contract signups. The era of trust but verify is over. Now the question is, who watches the guard? And if the answer isn't the league, the athletes warn that the guardrails will become theirs to shoulder. The betting bubble, how it burst. The explosion of player-specific bets didn't emerge overnight. It built quietly until the moment when the scandal's ink hit the public record. The betting market had grown from simple game outcomes into micro markets. How many points a player would score, how many minutes they would log, whether they'd play at all. One federal indictment revealed a player intentionally exited a game so an associate could collect on a bet tied to under minutes played.
Which laws will they apply? And I will bet you that the tax implications will be quite huge.
These tiny markets proved to be leverage points. The larger betting ecosystem, now legal and highly regulated, offered cover for schemes built on insider information. What once required whole game manipulation now only required a tweak. Miss a rebound, sit out the last quarter, tag an injury. Analysts call these prop bets the most exploitable part of sports gambling today. The league tools in place to guard against sweeping game fixes found themselves ineffective here. Betting monitoring systems were designed to detect large-scale rigging, not a million small decisions angled toward a micro-bet. As one investigative article put it, the infrastructure failed to keep pace with the speed and volume of same-game wagering. When the bubble burst, it did so not with chaos, but detection. Abnormal betting patterns triggered alerts. Sportsbooks flagged bets that stood out. Regulators and the league scrambled. Suddenly, the headline wasn't "player gambled," but "system exploited." One article described it as the league's entire model coming under test. The fallout is structural. Teams now revise how injury information is disclosed. The league is asking sportsbooks to pull back certain prop bet options. Education programs are being overhauled, but the core question remains: when the incentive to exploit is built into the market, can the protection ever fully catch up? The betting bubble broke. It didn't collapse in a dramatic crash, but deflated under the weight of its own complexity, exposure, and risk. For the players, the league, and the game itself, the moment wasn't just about one bad actor. It was about how a system thought safe suddenly became vulnerable. Gambling's new frontier, legal betting, illegal outcomes. The wide-scale arrival of legal sports betting was hailed as a new era for professional basketball. But for the league and its athletes, it may have opened a door to unseen danger. The shift transformed wagering from a fringe concern into a mainstream overlay. Suddenly, dozens of betting formats tied directly to individual player performance became available, creating novel opportunities for exploitation.
Well, entrapment's always one. I would say lack of intent. So saying I did not know of this, particularly in the area of the poker games, how much knowledge did they have of these schemes being processed?
On its face, the legal market offers transparency and regulation. But inside the system, insiders point out the paradox. Legal bets can provide the same routes to manipulation that illegal bookies once provided. Investigations show players and coaches allegedly provided inside information about injuries or playing time so that bettors could place massive underbets on their minutes or stats. The league's public partnerships with sportsbooks intensified the challenge. While broadcast promos and apps present betting as entertainment, the underlying data flows, rotation changes, injury updates, minute restrictions became highly profitable and highly risky. One opinion piece bluntly described the relationship as the league having jumped into bed with gambling companies. For players, the paradigm has shifted. They are no longer only potential bettors. They are often the subject of bets. Their performance, health, even bench status become variables in a speculator's ledger. The front line has moved. The threat isn't just placing a bet, it's being bet on. The system rewards micro decisions, whether a player exits after 9 minutes, whether a substitute logs 0 field goals, whether a roll of the ankle leads to early rest. These are the kinds of events that prop bets hinge upon. The boundary between legal and illicit becomes thin when inside knowledge influences such bets. Legal sportsbooks may offer the bet, but when non-public info is used, exploitation follows. Accordingly, some analysts argue the legal betting model, unless carefully regulated, may be enabling the same abuses it was meant to contain. In this frontier, the game is still basketball, but the arena has expanded. It now includes analytics firms, betting platforms, regulatory investigators, and data networks. The athlete of today must navigate not just defenders and pick and rolls, but also betting appetites and information flows. In this new reality, staying off the ledger is as important as staying on the stat sheet. From locker room to courtroom, the fallout begins. The scandal has exited the realm of rumors and internal investigations. It is now firmly in the courtroom. Two of the most prominent figures in the NBA, a current player and a head coach, were arrested in a sweeping federal probe that spans insider sports betting and mob-linked poker operations. Terry Rozier, the Miami Heat guard, was indicted on charges of using confidential information to facilitate bets on his own performance, including a March 2023 game where he allegedly communicated plans through associates. Meanwhile, Chauncey Billups, head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers and a basketball icon, was implicated in a separate but related scheme involving high-stakes poker games allegedly rigged by organized crime.
You would have to prove the connection of not just knowledge, actual knowledge, but intent to deceive.
Their arrest triggered immediate consequences. Both were placed on leave by their teams and their salaries withheld, while the league and the players' union scrambled to assess liability, contract clauses, and reputational damage. The broader investigation lists over 30 defendants across 11 states, including members of prestigious crime families, underscoring that this is not a case of isolated poor judgment, but rather a systemic breach of integrity. For players, coaches, and franchises, the chilling message is that no contract, no star status, no veteran tenure grants grants immunity. The legal apparatus sweeping through the sport threatens careers, livelihoods, and legacies. Mocking or mismanaging exposure to data, minutes, injuries, or game information can now lead not just to suspend and fine, but prosecution and decades of litigation. Teams have launched internal compliance campaigns and retained outside counsel. The union is probing whether athlete protections and due process were adequate. Media coverage is saturated with court dates, sealed indictments, and subpoenaed statements. What was once confined to locker room whispers is now front page and in federal dockets. The fallout extends beyond those indicted. Sponsors are reevaluating partnerships. Betting companies are under regulatory scrutiny. The league faces heightened oversight from Congress, regulators, and stakeholders. In the courtroom, the stakes are not just legal penalties, they reflect the sport's future. One wrong ring, one secret signal, one manipulated stat line can now become a career-ending headline. The game is no longer just played on the court, it is played in courtrooms. What's next for the NBA? Reform, redemption, or ruin? The moment arrives when the league must act, or be defined by inaction. In the wake of sweeping charges and internal turmoil, the NBA has launched a broad review of its policies, rewriting injury reporting rules, restricting certain player stat prop bets, and deploying new AI-driven systems to monitor wagering flows. Yet reform alone won't be enough unless its pace and scale match the threat. The league's years of revenue growth from betting partnerships now face an integrity test. Critics highlight a deep mismatch. While bets are promoted publicly, protections for players and data flows lag behind. Players still feel vulnerable. The guardrails around their conduct, disclosures, and exposure remain underdeveloped. The union and athletes now demand not only enforcement but prevention, education, and transparency. Without that, the risk is real. One case, one leak, one exploited minute can shadow an entire career. Public trust hangs on the outcome. Sponsors, broadcasters, and fans are no longer content with promise. They require proof. If the games are viewed as manipulable or outcomes beholden to odds rather than effort, the entertainment value erodes. The league's future may hinge more on integrity than on athleticism. Redemption is possible, but it requires structural change, independent oversight beyond the league, tighter regulation of prop bets, rigorous protection of insider data, and visible discipline when infractions occur. Without those elements, the alternative to reform is ruin, a sport overshadowed by speculation instead of competition. For the players, the message is clear. Performing on the court is no longer enough. The arena has expanded. Now it includes data streams, betting markets, and regulatory scrutiny. The next chapter of the NBA could become its most consequential. Either it reasserts its legitimacy, or it becomes a cautionary tale of what happens when sport becomes service to the book. This scandal has exposed fault lines within the NBA's culture, business model, and player protections. The next chapter will be written in real time, on court, in boardrooms, and in courtrooms. Subscribe, share your thoughts below, and stay tuned as this story evolves.